Dave, we're getting ready for this trade freeze. 3 p.m. Eastern time today goes, I believe, until 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on the 22nd. Do you anticipate anything for the Maple Leafs today?
Well, they're still engaged. I think now winning 3 in a row, 5 points back, getting back on track a little bit after whatever the hell that was at home. I think they're exploring both sides. I think they're exploring the sellers market, and I think they're looking to see how they can add to this group. Not from a rental side, from somebody that can fit this group with term. But as far as I know, Treliving is willing to listen on a variety of his guys, not just the pending UFAs that they've got with it was Bobby McMann and Kelly Yarncrook and whomever else. They're still willing to listen on some of their other guys that have term. You have Michelli, you have Domi, you have Carlo, you have OEL. They're willing to explore a variety of different things by the sounds of it. Whether they pull the trigger on something by 3 p.m.'s deadline, we'll have to wait and see. The other thing in all this, and I just mentioned this, I tweeted this earlier just to remind everybody, this freeze doesn't eliminate the possibility of signing anybody to an extension. So whether it's the Leafs or another team, they can still negotiate, finalize a contract extension during this break, file it, and make it official. So for some teams, they're going to utilize that break to get some housekeeping in order. Columbus, for example, is going to do that with their pending UFAs, Charlie Coyle and Boone Jenner. I've got to imagine Toronto will want to have a conversation with their guys if they don't move them or anything happens here over these next few hours.
And Dave, are you expecting MLSE to address the media, and when do you think that'll happen? And do you think there'll be a clear vision on where their head is at after a press conference like that?
I don't think anything is happening anytime soon, Rosie. I think maybe they wait until after the break. Look, teams report back on the 17th. That's when all the teams get back to practice and whatnot. There is an opportunity in that timeline to address the media, or at least wait until the Olympic break ends, which is the 22nd. Games get played on the 25th. Use that window to kind of say, all right, here's our pre-trade deadline game plan, and here's the overall scope of what we're looking at doing moving forward, at least in the short term between now, trade deadline, playoffs, draft, all that stuff. Tree does a good job in doing every quarter in addressing the media. Sometimes it's been on the road. Earlier this season, it was at home. It wouldn't surprise me if they do something along those lines, but I don't think this is going to be a full-on, State of the Union address. I think they're going to wait till after the season to have that type of press conference.
The biggest question I have, and we talked about this last week, Dave, look, I want to hear from Keith Pelly. It's not going to happen, but to the best of your knowledge, is Brad Treliving's job safe? Like this time next year or even in September, is Brad Treliving the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs in your opinion?
As of now, I think so. I don't believe there's a consideration at this time to make a change at the top. As far as I can tell, Tree is still head of hockey ops and has still the green light to do whatever he needs to do for the betterment of this team, or what he feels is in the best case of the team. Again, maybe that gets addressed in the offseason. That's going to depend on how the rest of the season plays out. I think it's still a little bit premature to consider any of those types of changes at the top right now.
And after that homestand where you lose 5 straight, it was pretty unanimous across everywhere that they have turned themselves into sellers, and that was just the narrative. Has that changed at all that they won 3 in a row on the road before the break? Is Tree's mind on making the playoffs, do you think, and making sure he keeps his job? Where do you think their head is at on the tip of the spear here with this team?
Yeah, they're still dead set, and the mind is on playoffs. Make the playoffs, do what you can. You're 5 points out right now. You forget about that dip, which was ugly. You had the loss to Seattle to start the road trip. Wasn't good by any stretch. But you kind of come back and you get into this break with a different level of confidence. Now you also have these next 3 weeks to kind of mend anybody, and there are players on this team that could use that break. Any team, really, all of them. But use these next 2 to 3 weeks to kind of heal and get back, as close to 100% as you can. And then you just you just zero in because it's going to be a hell of a race once we come back right to the playoffs, right to the finish line of the regular season. So their mindset is still on making the playoffs. That's where the focus is. As far as what they do, like I said, I think this is situational. It's both. If they have an opportunity to improve their club now and moving forward, I think they do that. But at the same time, I think they're also going to continue to listen on a lot of their assets. And if there's a deal that's just too good to pass up, I think they consider it. Again, whether that's Scott Lawton or Bobby McMann or Kelly Yarncroc or whomever, pending UFA, or a Carlo, Domi, Michelli, OEL, etc. I think they're willing to listen on that front. But some guys, obviously, the price tags are going to be significantly higher than others. But it's twofold. This is we'll listen and we're also exploring. But anything that they do in terms of adding to this roster, I'd be shocked if it's anything of the rental variety.
From the rental standpoint, I think the sell point could be Bob McMahon around the league. I think there's a lot of versatility, and this is not me just being a Leafs guy building this guy up. I think the $1.35 million cap hit, the versatility, the speed, the shot, he's playing with Matthews right now. There's a lot of reasons why I think a lot of teams would be interested in this guy. Edmonton, for one, to the best of my knowledge, there haven't been any conversations yet between the Oilers and the Maple Leafs, but at some point in time, I think that's going to happen between now and March 6th. But I need some juice here. Give me a ballpark. What are the chances Bob McMahon's dealt between now and March 6th?
I think a lot of that'll depend on the conversations over the next month. I'd be a little bit surprised if anything happens today, despite their activity, with respect to him. Again, if an offer is presented that's too good to pass up, I'm stating the obvious here, they'll consider it. But they also like the player, and they have to decide, does it make sense to sign him and keep him around as, let's call a spade a spade? He's a secondary option, but he's a very good secondary option and a very good complementary piece for this roster. Guy's on pace for 25, 26 goals. Like you said, he's got some wheels. He's not afraid to get a little bit of dirty when he needs to. And right now the cap hit is a sweetheart cap hit, but that money's going around $5 million per year moving forward. So do you want to utilize that right now? And attribute that to your cap next season, or do you want to pool those funds together and go after a bigger fish? That's also what they need to kind of decide to do, unless they feel comfortable in moving other assets, and then that's how they make the money work, even with the cap going up. But you're right, there is a lot of value in Bobby McMahon, and there are a lot of teams that would be very interested to have him on their roster, not just a team like Edmonton. I mean, that matches up because of what they're looking for and the cap hit itself. But there are other teams. I mean, look at all the top tier contenders right now, Colorado and Dallas. I'd throw them in the mix of teams that would have interest in a player of McMahon's caliber. LA needs goal scoring, not only the Panarin stuff, but they're looking around to see what other options are available to them as well. You look at some of the younger teams out there, like a San Jose, who's also looking for a top six. Now, they already made their move for a rental in terms, or expiring contract. They'd like to keep Kiefer Sherwood, but they've added him to the mix, and he missed a bunch of action. But slot that in. They're still looking to see if they can kind of shore up the overall attack of this club as they try to push for the playoffs too. So there are going to be options for the Leafs when they do decide to pull the trigger on this, and I've got to imagine they know some of those options now.
And Dave, if they do think they can get into the playoffs and that's their goal, and they don't make a lot of seller type moves here at the deadline, and they still miss the playoffs, which statistically I think is the most likely scenario here, whose head's going to roll, and how are they going to be different, and how are they going to prevent this from happening next season?
Well, I'm going to state the obvious. I don't want to use the Mitch excuse, but when you lose, again, a player of that caliber and don't replace him, you're going to regress in some fashion. They felt that their decor and their goaltending was going to maintain what it did last season. They felt that with a stronger bottom six, it would allow them to be more competitive. But you lost a lot of offense, and you can address those other areas, but now you got to focus on adding up front. And I've got to think that that's going to be a big selling point to the big bosses, to say, here's the plan. We like our roster. we want to keep this guy or that guy or replace this guy or that guy with similar pieces, but we've got to go out and get ourselves a top six guy, a legitimate first line player or second line player at the very least. And I've got to think that that's where it is. Now it's going to be up to Pelly and everybody to buy in. And if they believe that Tree's the guy to go do this, all right, give him another season and see if he can pull it off. Otherwise you have to go in a different direction. But I don't think they're there yet. I'm just kind of speaking out loud about it. But I think that's an area that has to be addressed for this group. As nice as McMahon and Domi have played overall in spurts with Austin Matthews, they're not first line players. And, can you bring in, if you put Nyes back up with Matthews, then you need somebody on that right side. If Tavares and Nylander are going to stick together, is McMahon the guy on that left side, or do you go out and find somebody else or find another center and move JT to the wing? Either way, they got 4 top 6 forwards. They're missing 2. You have to address that.
The elephant in the room, Morgan Rielly.
Sorry, Nick.
Rose, you want to go ahead?
Just to follow up on that, is there any world where they miss the playoffs and Craig Berube is still the coach and Treliving still the GM?
Yeah. I don't think this is going to be. Again, it depends. If they just miss out, if they bottom out here, then obviously you have to look at making those significant changes and making those types of moves. As the coach, you have to adjust to what you have. You may want to have your players, and I think Chief even addressed this at some point. You may want to have your players play a certain style or have a certain structure in their game. But if they don't have the capability of doing that or the talent to do that overall, you have to just deal with what you've got. And so, I think there's a little bit of leeway there from the coaching side. If they bottom out, different story. If they're right in it. Again, I think those changes are still premature right now. Whether it's coach or GM or whatnot, anything off the ice, I think, is going to be reviewed at the end of the season. I don't think they're really considering anything like that now.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me, and I think every year is different, but teams have been reluctant to make coaching changes, and then you look at what Columbus is doing with Bones coming out of retirement. There you go. They've won 10 of 11, I think it is, with Rick Bowness as the head coach, and they're making a crazy run. I think some team's going to do it. I don't know if it's going to be the Leafs or Columbus, where we're not really considering them right now for a playoff spot, but they ultimately get in. Just to wrap the conversation, Morgan Rielly, the elephant in the room. I know the sample size is small, but the team has looked a bit better without Rielly in the lineup. How do they approach this deadline? Any chance he's moved between now and March 6th, or is this more of an off-season conversation?
I think that's more off-season. But I will say this just with respect. You mentioned Columbus and coaching change. I talked to some guys on that team. They felt that they tuned the coach out, that that Evansson lost the room. I don't get the sense that's the case right now in Toronto. So that's the other factor in why Columbus ultimately made that change. They also felt they were a hell of a lot better than they had displayed, and clearly it looks like that. But that's a big reason. I don't get the sense that that's the case right now in Toronto. On Mo, I know there were conversations, and I think I know I've reported, I think others have too, I'm pretty sure, that there were conversations at the end of last season about what he wants to do. Would he consider waiving his no move? And then it was, no, I'm going to focus on offseason. He came into camp in great shape. Everybody was hyped about him. He just hasn't taken that step. He hasn't gotten back to the type of player that he was. Now, it's tough because as a number 2 defenseman at $7.5 million, solid rate, responsibility is a little bit different. I think there would be interest in this player as a number 2. He's just not a number 1. And I think the Leafs will have that conversation with him again. I just would be a little bit surprised if it's in season. I think that's probably something they're going to have that or address and have that conversation once the season wraps up, whenever that is.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.